panel that's going to go right by the transmission. That's going to help fill out the rest of Travis's pretty much sheet metal.
So the front, is this driver's side or passenger?
This is driver's side.
Oh, okay.
So all this is laid out. We got all the fins coming off to catch with the rest of the tube so that when it gets seam sealed, it'll be all perfect and stuff like that.
Oh, I see. You sharpen this up with the tipping die? You use a tipping die on that?
Yeah, sharpen that up because we couldn't get it bend quite all the way on it, so I was able to put it in there and sharpen it. So
okay.
Once this gets welded, fully welded along this top side, then I'm going to cut this out for an access panel just because I don't want it to move around before we actually.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's good. Are we stepping this, or are we just going to butt up against in this?
We're going to butt up perfectly against it.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
You won't even tell.
Okay. Are we flanging any of the stuff in there, like any of the flat panels? Did we decide to do that?
I think we decided against that just because it'd be so many pieces trying to get perfectly matched.
Copy together. That. Okay. All right.
And
very good.
Welding it, blending it out would be a lot of time.
And then is this asymmetrical? Are we going to mirror this to the other side? Okay.
It's going to be perfectly.
Or symmetrical. I mean, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're mirroring this over to the other side. And did you check the template on that already?
I have not checked the template on that. I've just been doing the driver's side and getting this one done. I'm going to get it clecoed in.
Is this ready to fit? Can I see this in there?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check that out.
We still have to trim a little bit, but that'll go.
Okay, so this is representing floor height, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that looks good. That's going to be bitching. Yeah.
This guy made up against that and get clecoed in place. And then I still got to chop this edge so that these meet up perfectly. And then once we get to put the actual main floor in, all these corners will be welded.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so you'll weld up all the corners, blend it all out. Okay, cool. No, that's looking good. Hopefully that piece will mirror the other side and it'll just chew away a bunch of time.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't have to design two individual pieces. We don't know if the chassis is symmetrical. You know, we didn't construct the chassis, but I think that we're probably pretty good. Lewis is pretty good at that stuff. So
once this is in, I'm gonna start making this piece, start making this guy, and then finish off this little section, mainly this guy.
Okay.
Put the floor in there.
Okay.
And then we have these panels already made, which will honestly complete a lot of this except for this panel. We haven't touched that one yet. Start doing the other side.
Okay.
And then go.
And then all the brake pedals cleared now with the steering, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, all that's
awesome.
All that
badass.
Last week, all welded up, all good to go.
Okay, so good job. Yeah, it looks killer. Keep on it, dude. Doing good. Welcome back, episode 3. Super pumped to have this going today. So actually, today we have some super cool stuff going on. We're gonna design a part. We're gonna show the part that we designed on SolidWorks, and then we're gonna send it over to our laser cutter, and then we're gonna go over to the laser cutter and we'll watch it being cut out. It's pretty cool. The guy has like $1 million Mazic laser cutter. It's pretty badass. But that way you can kind of see like how we design a part and where we go to go pick it up and what it looks like coming out of the machine and all that stuff. So should be pretty fun. And then we also, we're gonna update what we got going on with all our projects, and let's just start with the Silverado while we're here. So on the Silverado, we got all this closed out. None of this was closed out last time. I think maybe that center triangle panel was in, but that's it. So we got all this closed out around the shock mounts. We had the holes in the shock mounts welded in, those through holes. So we put a backer on the back side because once we closed all this out, we realized, you know, you want your kid riding back here and dropping his Hot Wheel down in there, you're never gonna get that rattle out of it. So, but all the fluid transfer lines are wrapped up in here for the radiator, the hot and cold side of the radiator. We got everything. We got a little bit of final welding to do on all these panels, but at least they're all in, everything's closed out. You can kind of see the shock pocket in here. So you can see the shock pocket. So this upper mount right here is for the coilover, and then this rear mount right here is for the bypass. So the bypass obviously behind the coilover, both those coming down to the trailing arm, which is off the truck currently, so we can gain access to work on this thing. We had a small interference issue with one of the master cylinders on the brake pedal, so we just notched this out and added some bracing here for the steering mount that we designed. I didn't want to redo the whole thing. I just wanted to keep moving forward. So sometimes we'll just notch out around stuff as necessary. Still super strong, 3 mounting points on the column. And then all the shifter and the turning brake stuff's in, all the brackets are done on that, so we'll weld that out. All that should be, I think all the sheet metal will be done in this thing on episode 4, so we'll be able to show you all that too. So Aiden's just jamming on this thing. He just got this panel wrapped up and fit. And so he has just the rest of these panels to close out on the floor, and then we'll move over to the passenger side and close all that out. So we're moving along pretty good on this thing. It's gonna be pretty cool. We'll get into plumbing also pretty quick here, so should be bitching. Look, this guy. So Dallas, you know, the single man that he is, when he brings his lunch, so obviously we have the fridge, you know, you can bring your lunch, whatever. We keep our drink stuff in here. Who the hell brings the whole pan to lunch? Like, dude, yeah. Fine. I like your style. You don't want to waste the Tupperware. You know what I mean? Tupperware is stupid. You got to wash that shit.
environmentally friendly.
Yeah, it's all about Ziploc bags and just bringing the pan, I guess. Pretty funny. So Dallas, show us what you got going here.
Starting the water lines.
So the water transfer lines on this from radiator to engine, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So all stainless steel, we purge weld everything. Doing Wiggins fittings on all of these. So this is a Wiggins ferrule right here. Takes an O-ring, has a collar, slips over it, and then a clamshell clamp. I think in episode 1 I went over that. Yeah. Yeah, we'll show them that, Dallas, but show us what you got going here.
Well, we got the front end of the truck back on.
Oh yeah, so all this is wrapped up. I think since the last episode, we didn't have any of these coolers on. So we have the intercooler for the supercharger, the engine oil cooler, the power steering cooler, AC condenser down in here, and then obviously the radiator behind all that stuff. So I think we'll open this up. We'll probably put 2 more factory style slots right here just to make sure we get enough fresh air to the intercooler, and we'll probably put 2 slots in the hood and then put some mesh on the back side of the one in the hood. So that should look pretty rad. We have to modify the fiberglass drastically anyways. The tire comes up and bumps up so high that even bulging the fender out isn't enough. We actually have to bulge the hood out because it comes up into the, past the hood line as well. So we're excited about that because nobody makes really bitchin' fiberglass for this. So I'll reach out to a couple fiberglass companies that do a lot of off-road, bedsides and front fenders after we make the molds for this and see if we can pop those, and maybe we can offer those for these older trucks for the off-road industry. Anyways, here's a Wiggins clamp. So this is a clamp that, that goes around. You can see this in here. This is that sleeve I was talking about that slides over the ferrule and the O-ring. So once you have, this is your A side. Once you have your B side, that ferrule slips in here with an O-ring, and then this clamp just goes around that ferrule and closes up. If this clamp clicks and closes, it's accurate. It cannot leak unless you have a damaged O-ring. So if this thing doesn't clamp or doesn't click, you have it crooked or something's not 100% correct. So it's kind of a go, no go situation. Anyway, so yeah, so here's the water pump inlet, and then it'll pull from the bottom of the radiator. So he's making this line right here. Hey, Dallas, are we gonna run these lines? So you're probably gonna run this line down so that it comes along this, and both these lines are going together, paralleling each other, correct?
I want this one to come straight down, parallel with the radiator, then they're both gonna run parallel with the frame, and then kick back up and grab the front of the water pump.
And the reason we take the efforts to do that kind of stuff is, not only does it look cool, but it keeps everything kind of close together, and it frees up room for us to mount other items in that area if we need to. We still have to do all the reservoirs for this thing, the power steering reservoir, the coolant reservoir. So we'll build a overflow and an expansion tank together. So we need room for that stuff. And it looks like we have a lot of room now, but as we start packaging all the plumbing equipment in here, it really starts, filling up quick. So one cool thing that we ended up doing is we have an F-body balancer drive system on this, not drive system, but F-body Camaro balancer on this LS3 engine. This new Magnuson supercharger, I think this one's a 2450. Is this one the 2450, Nick? I think it is, or 2650. So I think this is the biggest one that Magnuson makes currently. The problem we were running into is it uses a truck drive. The truck drive, the balancer is out here. Well, as you can see, I'm trying to push everything as close to the engine as possible to make room. Plus, it just leverages less on the crankshaft having that hanging way out. So what we ended up doing is we took this tube and the shaft on the inside, it was a carbon fiber shaft on the inside. We machined 1.7 inches out of the tube, and then also machined a stainless steel shorter shaft that matched the bearing setup inside this. So we moved this back 1.7 inches so that it lines up with the Camaro drive. So I think we're the only guys that have that. So we may, if there's anybody hitting us up for that, we may actually sell that or offer that modification for people if they want to put this supercharger, in an off-road application, or, just a standard race car application that doesn't have, the truck drive system in it. So that was kind of a cool thing that we wrapped up this, since the last episode. Yeah, engine mounts are all done since last episode. Exhaust system, we changed the mufflers on it. I wanted to put a Flowmaster on it. Instead, we changed mufflers and then wrapped all the exhaust system up. So you can kind of see up under here, Ryan, like all the exhaust. Transmission mounts done. And then we just build hangers for the exhaust. We solid mount the exhaust. On the cars, we don't. On the cars, we rubber mount stuff, but on the off-road trucks, everything's solid mounted. So we have less chassis flex. The chassis are so rigid in this. We've never had a failure. It's all Everything's welded up, everything's solid, but we've never had a failure with cracking or anything like that. So seems to be, you know, for the last 10 years we've been doing it, seems to be working well. So yeah, so we don't rubber mount, we just make saddles for everything. I think we have, here's a saddle assembly right here. So we use the stainless T-clamps. We use a half shell of the exhaust tubing. We cut it out and shape it, and then we weld it to a bracket. And then the stainless T-clamp just slides up over that half shell and just clamps the tube to the radius shell that matches it. So super easy way and super strong way to, you know, mount an exhaust system. Here's another one you can see kind of right up in here. I don't know if you can capture that right there, but so we have one here, we have one here. We have quite a few going along. And then the exhaust breaks apart with V-band assembly, so you can take a bunch of the pieces apart. Like if you needed to access something, you don't have to take the whole system off. You can access that area by taking that section of the exhaust off. So that's kind of a cool feature as well. So we're pushing hard to try to get this thing in paint like into April, sometime in May. So like I said, we wrapped up the exhaust. We're really working hard at getting all the engine functions done so that we can start putting electronics in it. We have the AC mounted underneath. Like if we pulled this access panel off, this is the one for the driver's side, the same on both sides. But the AC is mounted inside here. So now we're ready to start mounting all the electronics. We have all the gauges that have already been fitted and mounted. They're just out currently. This is the Holley LCQ screen goes right here. And then we'll put an iPad here. But one of the cool features that I love about this truck is we made the dash. It's the factory 65 F100 dash, but it unbolts. So we'll have it covered in leather or upholstered. Same thing with all the interior panels. So I just think it's super cool to have the factory dash instead of us making an aluminum dash, which the aluminum dashes are cool and neat looking like we did for the Willys. But this is kind of just a classic cool shape. And so I just think it's neat that we retained that. So yeah, so we're down to electronics, plumbing. I went to TubeWorks yesterday and checked on the rear end housing. It's almost done. So we'll get that in. Bigger shocks. Hopefully we get our shocks pretty soon. Those been on order for a little bit through Suspension Development Group, but we're putting Foxes all the way around on this thing. 3.0 coilovers and 4.0 5-tube bypasses. We've upgraded a ton of stuff on the truck. And then all this beam system is gonna disappear. We're gonna do billet swingers instead of these chromoly swingers. We're gonna retain our chromoly beam mount, but that spindle assembly that we designed, the upright and the billet beam end, that's actually being machined now. We're gonna make a different arm here, a different beam arm actually that we weld to the billet end. And then we're gonna do aluminum 7 series radius arms. So this will be 7 series aluminum swingers, 7 series aluminum radius arms. The reason I'm doing that, I wanted to shave a little bit of weight because our billet beam end is so strong and so dense that it added more weight than I wanted it to. It'll work fine if we didn't, but I'm gonna try to trim some weight elsewhere just to kind of make up for that. But I really think that we're building the strongest billet beam end upright for an I-beam system ever created. Like the spread is massive, which the reason we're increasing the spread is if you can see right here, we have about 3 inches of beam end right here. So you're pivoting on just this distance right here, which is approximately 5 inches, but you have a 40-inch tire leveraging against that. So as the tires get bigger and get heavier, it's just harder and harder. So it wears the kingpin. I've seen bent kingpins. It wears the bushings out super fast. So we're moving away from that. And the industry has moved away from that quite a while ago with uniballs and, you know, fabricated chromoly, you know, uprights, spindles, you know, spindle snouts bolt on to a lot of the beam ends now, just so for serviceability. But we just wanted to make one even stronger. So we increased the spread even more. We have 16 degrees of kingpin inclination. So it's gonna, you know, it keeps our scrub radius to a minimum. I think it's just gonna be a badass, real badass, strongest one in the world type beam end. So should be pretty bitchin'. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we are with this thing right now. We're just jamming, like I said, trying to get all of our fluid AB points done, all the tanks, and then we'll start plumbing, putting all the electrical in it so that we can pre-wire this thing. And then at that point, we have to shape all the fiberglass, and then we can blow it apart and send everything to paint and powder coat. We'll probably nickel plate all the suspension, paint everything, and then we'll either anodize or Cerakote certain components. So should be a really, really nice off-road truck when it's done. So as far as the 71 Pantera goes, engine and transmission is in it. We had to replace the engine mounts that bolt to the actual engine itself. At some point in their life they came loose, and so it kind of elongated the hole and wore the mounting pads down. So we got new ones of those. We have new flanges, laser cut, so I think you can capture them from up underneath the fender well here. You can see where we have the exhaust ports taped off, and there's the stainless steel laser cut flange. So we just laser cut it to the actual gasket and then opened it up 50 thousandths, or I'm sorry, 65 thousandths all the way around. So as the tube fits in there, it matches the gasket perfectly on the inside. So we have all the material to build the headers and exhaust system for this, but I'm waiting for the client to show up because I want to make some changes and I want to get his approval. The Pantera hardcore purists won't like what I want to do, but I'm gonna do 180-degree headers and then exit the exhaust out here where the condenser normally went. These things, the air conditioning wasn't that good in the first place. I think they make some upgraded condensers and fans to make them work better, but we're just gonna put it in the front where we're capturing fresh air in the first place. So the condenser will work exceptional up there in front. I'd like to bring the exhaust out here. We'll make a cool panel that, you know, goes with the exhaust opening. And then the factory exhaust opening, I may move this around and change this around a little bit and probably put a diffuser on the bottom, but not a big, giant, ugly one, something classy and subtle, not, you know, one of those big, giant diffusers that, you know, I'm not making fun of the import cars, but sometimes I don't understand why they have 80-pound diffusers hanging off the back of those things, so I don't know. But anyway, so that's what's going on with the Pantera. We're really just waiting for the client to show up. So that's what we got going on with that. Okay, and then my 3rd gen Camaro. So I think last episode I was, you know, wrapping it up and getting ready to run. We've run it on the dyno. We had an incident where normally this car has gone, well, the fastest this car's gone is 151 in the quarter. So during dyno sessions, we went 165. It was just enough extra mile an hour to grow the tire a little bit more, and it grabbed the quarter panel, moved it, the quarter panel kind of folded it. Didn't actually hurt anything, got super lucky on that. We were able to pull it out. You can barely tell it happened. I'll have it repaired after I'm done racing and messing with this thing. I'll leave it like that for now. But we have some kind of gremlin we're chasing in the ignition system. It just doesn't run quite right. And so I know it made 754 wheel horsepower in the past. So obviously with the new engine combination and the amount of nitrous we're running now, which we're running an additional 150 more horsepower on the nitrous, we should make considerably more horsepower. We are not, so we're chasing that ignition gremlin. Once we get that dialed in and squared away, hopefully we can capture that on video for you, laying some numbers down on this thing. So, but that's where we're at with the Camaro currently. I think episode 1 we touched base on the Mini Ranger, but we haven't talked about it much since. Well, some of the things that we're changing, it's almost ready to go, almost finished. Some of the changes that we've decided to make, I was talking with RJ Anderson about some of my cooling issues with this. It doesn't run hot, but it runs hotter than it did stock. So I wanted to make sure we're not gonna have any issues with that. We have the CBR intercooler and radiator sandwiched together. It's a race kit that they sell, and I think if that whole assembly was out up front in fresh air, we wouldn't have any issues. But since we have it in the back to mimic the transcoolers of the bigger trucks, we decided to separate the intercooler and the radiator itself. So we're leaving the radiator and the fans back here. I'm mounting the factory intercooler back up front, and then we'll just replumb the lines in the middle of the chassis to this intercooler here. So we just carefully set the intercooler in here. That's the size intercooler we're gonna use. We'll obviously build brackets and it'll be sticking straight up. It'll get nice fresh air in the front because there is no radiator in the front. So the only air the only thing that, you know, that will be up here is the intercooler, so it's just capturing good, clean, fresh air. The other issue we have, an open circuit on one of the fans, so that's why Marty has this wiring de-loomed, so we can trace that down and find that. Should be a pretty easy fix. Other than that, we're ready to go with this thing. We'll put the fenders back on, and I'm actually gonna sell this thing, so we'll probably play with it a little bit and then we'll put it up for sale. I'll show you where we're gonna run the coolant lines. Here's the intercooler pump itself. So those are going up, and you can even see we had to change the way the direction of stuff went. This thing, it's not fully pinched off, but I don't like how tight that corner is right there. So we'll actually, this pump will still be in operation, but it will move all the fluid, circulate it from the intercooler that's inside the intake all the way through this channel right here of the chassis up to the intercooler in the front, and then back to the intercooler in the engine, and then back to the pump. So we have plenty of room to design that and bring those fluid transfer lines up underneath here. So the cool thing about this Razor is, you know, we made all the front suspension 4.5 inches wider per side, and then the only section of chassis that's stock in this thing is the section right here that's underneath the front differential, and then this section right here that's underneath the engine and transmission. So we stretched this thing 18 inches and then built the rest of the chassis. The radius arms that we made, these trailing arms, I call them radius arms, sorry, trailing arms and radius rods, how we widen the rear is I just moved this mounting point out the 5 inches that it needed to move out, or actually 4.5 technically. So this arm can bolt on a factory arm. We just moved the mounting point out, and then I just made longer 7 series aluminum radius rods. So all the pivot points are factory pivot points. We just moved them out. And then we added a bypass. I think I touched base on that in the first episode, but having the bypass on there, man, it makes such an insane difference on how this thing rides and drives. This thing is, it's the plushest vehicle I've ever driven off-road. It's almost too plush. Like, you can't go big in it. Don't hit super huge big jumps, but everything else, it's just smooth, super smooth. So Nick, I was gonna go over the 510 with you.
Okay.
I noticed that you've welded all this out this morning, so that's good. So all the front mounting stuff, all the strut mounts, I mean, all of the front part of the chassis is all welded out now. Yep. I think we've root passed most of the chassis, haven't we?
Root passed most from the cowl rearward. We haven't done too many cover passes there. Wait till we pull the body to do the...
Okay. But yeah, last episode, none of this was welded up. I don't think this was fixtured, actually. Nope. So we fixtured all this stuff so it doesn't move around a whole bunch when we're welding things up. Plus we built fixtures because we're going to drop the factory K-member out of here, and we'll build a tubular K-member that holds the engine and the sway bar and the steering rack. Yeah. But yeah, all our control arm mounts are done for the rear control arm. And so now we're gonna be moving on to the rear suspension. Here's the factory 160 diff. We're gonna run a bigger differential. And here's the BC racing strut on the factory spindle assembly for the rear. But what we need to establish is this car's being built at bump, meaning that it's bottomed out all the way. So we have 3 inches of ground clearance, fully bottomed. We'll have 5 inches of ride height, and fully topped out, we'll have 7 inches of ride height. So we need to establish the tire height and tire center line fully bumped out. So we'll end up, next episode, you guys see this thing, we'll have the quarter panel cut to fit the tire. And what we're trying to establish right now is we have the chassis tubes run. I think these weren't done last time either, the rear main chassis rails. So inside here, we're going to build an assembly that holds the lower control arms, the forward control arm, trailing arm, but we're trying to have the arms level at ride height. So we need to establish that height. That's why we need to get the tire in there, get wheel center line height, and that way we can calculate how far down off center line the mounting point is for the control arm, so we can mirror that to the inside of the chassis. So yeah, we're just basically doing chassis stuff in the rear now. Hopefully by episode 5, I'm thinking we'll probably have this as a roller, won't we, Nick?
I hope so.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, and then engine is almost done at RPM in Huntington Beach, so we'll have the engine back here pretty quick. We'll have the bigger STI transmission in it. So this thing should be looking pretty good here pretty soon.
Oh yeah.
So I know a lot of guys were asking about the 510, so I just wanted to make sure that we had a good update for you guys. It's tough to work on your own personal stuff as you're building things for other people, so we're limited on the amount of time that we have allotted for this thing. So it's just a couple hours here and there. So we go as fast as we can during that amount of time that we have, but we're pushing pretty good on it. I think, yeah, so Nick's jamming on it whenever he gets a few free moments. Sometimes he'll come in a little bit early and get some welding done on it for an hour or two, and then move on to our normal projects. So just bear with us. We'll get it done as fast as we can. 49 Willys. This is kind of our flagship build right now. This is probably the most badass off-road truck we've ever built, wouldn't you say, Nick? I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
He makes that black one they look like crap.
Yeah, the old Black Ranger's a bucket of shit compared to this thing. Anyways, last episode, what we've gotten accomplished since then, we're diligently working on the front, trying to package. I think the fuel system is now plumbed. The upper firewall is closed out. We had to have that upper portion of the cowl removable, so we've got that all in. Hey, Nick, you think we should grab that piece and just kind of show them what it's going to look like there?
Yeah, I'll get it right now.
Okay. We had to notch this for clearance for the air filter system. You know, the throttle body goes right in. So what we're gonna do, we're so out of room on this thing. These lines right here represent the front of the grill. So this is all the area that we have for AC condenser, intercooler, and air filter system. So luckily our hood height is up here. So we're gonna build a box for a flat air filter that goes like a plenum box with an flat air filter top. And then it goes right into the throttle body and into the supercharger. So that leaves us, this little area back here is where our AC condenser is going. Oh, we got the panel in too.
Yep, she's snug. Got some spacers there.
So we've hidden the fasteners underneath. So you'll see the parting line, kind of like a door, but you won't see any fasteners or anything. And then I think we're gonna have this piece hinge, and so that's where we'll access the reservoirs for the master cylinder for the brake system, or that's the idea so far. There's no blueprint, so we design and engineer as we go. But yeah, so the condenser has this area right here. We decided on the sides right here is where we're gonna do our intercoolers. We'll probably build some sort of scoop system that scoops fresh air, and the intercoolers being warm won't push warm air or warm air saturating the AC condenser or the air filter. So we'll separate all that out with scoop. And then somehow the customer would love to have a winch on the front of this thing. I don't know if we're gonna be able to incorporate a small winch up behind the skid plate here, but
it's gonna be tough.
Or, we have this distance between the front of the grill. I don't want to block a bunch of airflow in here, but if we can get a small winch in here, we may do so as well. And we may make it removable.
Store it in the trunk area back there.
Yeah, we'll store it in the rear of the vehicle, but if you need it, you can come plug it in and put it in here. So we've done that on some of the off-road truck that we've previously built. So what else have you gotten done, Nick? I think you got the fuel system completely wrapped up.
Yeah, fuel system's 100% on this truck. Got the steering cooler over there mounted, the oil cooler over here mounted. Next step's gonna be plumbing those, but I have a lot of other components to go in here first, so just kind of a big puzzle I'm putting together here. The hood hinges got mounted yesterday, just tacked into place for now. I have a lot more components to put in here, so I'm not committing fully to certain things, so I can still play and
yeah, because we still have all the reservoirs to build for this.
Yeah, intercooler gets a reservoir, the brakes get a reservoir, steering gets a filter and a reservoir. 2 oil breather catch cans are going in here.
Catch cans, and then
all between.
The
intercooler pump's got to go in here.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of items that need to still go.
And the reservoirs for the masters right here, if we can squeeze those in there.
Between each item. So just waiting to do all those at once. That way I can plan everything to have all the plumbing wrapped together and look pretty streamlined.
We usually can do 5 pounds of, or 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. This is like 30 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. This one's gnarly.
It's tough.
Plus, what makes it difficult is when you're packaging everything so tight, you're trying to design some sort of serviceability into it as well. Right. So it's really important to be able to service these things. Yep. And it's nice not to have to pull off 30 things or break apart things that have fluid in them, to service certain components. So we're gonna put dry brakes on everything that we possibly can. That way you can disconnect lines, you don't have fluid spilling everywhere, you don't introduce air into the system. That should be super helpful when it comes to servicing this thing. Another thing I wanted to point out also, and I touched base on it earlier with the 65 F100, but we have an F-body balancer on this. A lot of these superchargers set up for the truck system, but the F-body balancer is farther in towards the engine. As you can see, the reason we did this, if you come around the side here, you can see we pushed everything back because we have very little amount of clearance right here between this shock bulkhead and the supercharger and the drive system being the water pump, alternator, power steering pump. It's good to be able to push that stuff back and use the F-body balancer so that you can have essentially an F-body drive system instead of the truck drive system. So it makes a big difference. Another thing that we designed too, we designed all the pulleys and all the brackets for this system. Nobody makes a drive system for this application, but it's just super important. The belt's a little bit loose right now, but it's super important. We're getting at least 180, if not more, degrees of wrap around all the pulleys, just so we don't have slippage, with the supercharger, alternator, water pump, etc.
The main crank pulley has about 270 degrees of wrap. I've got about just as much as I can get on each pulley.
To explain the wrap, your system drives this direction, so you have your belt, it starts here, wraps 180 degrees before it comes back off the pulley. So you're just grabbing more surface area of that pulley in doing that. Another feature that we like to do on the off-road trucks is they have hydraulic steering. And if you have some sort of a failure with your main drive belt, we keep the steering belt separate. And the reason we do that is if you lose a belt, then you lose cooling, you lose alternator, you lose power from the supercharger. You have lights that indicate that you have your temperature's rising. That's a good way to know that you've thrown a belt. But you'll still have steering because the steering belt is separate from the main belt. And I just feel that that's important just due to the fact that if you ever tried to steer one of these hydraulic, steered off-road trucks without the hydraulic steering, it's not fun.
Work.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, and I keep saying F-body balancer. So F-body is Camaro. All Camaros are called F-bodies. So the Camaro and Corvette balancers are closer to the engine than the trucks. The GM trucks stuck out God, I don't know, probably
An
like...
example to show them is actually on Travis's Silverado. He has a truck style.
Oh, gotcha.
It's the factory one, but you can see how much further off the
yeah, let's show that.
Pushes everything.
Yeah, let's show that. This is the balancer on a truck, and you can see that it sticks. So the front of the F body or balancer is probably at the rear of this balancer assembly. So the front of it is all the way back here. So it just helps push everything back closer to the engine, gaining more room up here, which, as you can see on the Willys, we needed to gain that room. So we're gonna go up to the new shop and check out one of our newer projects. This gentleman, good friend of mine, he's been waiting a couple years to get his car here. He's been super patient with me. We have a little bit of free time on our mechanical side of things, so I told him to go ahead and drop it off. He put a brand new 600 cubic inch Hemi in it. I believe it's 600 cubic inch, actually don't quote me on that. Built by Bob Mazzolini down in Riverside, but he wanted me to finish it up. So he had some other guys install it. It looks like they did a really good job on it. So the engine's in, so now we're hooking up the exhaust system, adding V-bands to the collectors on the headers, radiator, ignition, wiring, fuel lines, stuff like that, just to get the new engine running in the car correctly. And then after that, if budget allows, we'll probably either do a mini tub or a full tub. He hasn't decided which one he wants to do yet. I'm kind of leaning towards mini tub. They don't make a lot of these cars anymore. There's not a lot of them left that are in really good shape like this one. So I really don't want to cut it up fully and take the whole rear floor out. I'd rather just do a mini tub on it. I think it'll look a little classier and a little better. And he'll gain traction. We'll be able to get another 2 inches of wheel width on the ground doing a mini tub. But anyways, yeah, here's the 69 CUDA with the cross ram intake manifold on the Hemi, 2 carburetors. New ignition system. I think everything's brand new. This engine has been run on the dyno. I think Bob Mazzolini dynoed it. I don't have horsepower numbers for you. When I get those, I'll make sure I put them in the next episode. So, but yeah, super nice, really nice, clean car. Another buddy of ours from high school, Chris Redmond, did all this car for Mark probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 years ago. And I did the exhaust system on it back then, did a bunch of little things for him, added Wilwood brakes, stuff like that. It had a stout little 340 in it, but he just wanted the Hemi. You know, if you're a Mopar guy, the Hemi is the crown royal of everything, you know, when it comes to Mopar stuff. So inside super clean as well. I think Marty just got done wrapping up all the wiring underneath for the MSD ignition system. So yeah, just a nice clean driver. Like, it's not a full hardcore restoration show car or anything like that, but just a nice clean driver. And like I said, I don't see too many of these things around anymore, the 69s. I have another client that actually has one though, and so it's interesting to me that we have, you know, 2 that we've worked on, and there's just not a lot around anymore.
The goal today is to get this bracket drawn up. We're going to send it off to Western Fabricators. They use their big $1 million magic laser. It's a badass machine. There's backing gas too, so all the laser cut edges have no dross. They're pretty much good to go, ready to weld. Makes life easy. It's a really cool thing to watch cut. It's super fast, very, very accurate. That's our goal today. So right here, I'm just getting my mock-up AC condenser going. Nothing crazy detailed on this thing. For the most part, I just need the pickup points where it mounts to the chassis, a couple of the fittings, that kind of thing. Some guys will get real crazy into their renderings on it, but for this scenario, I don't plan on using this AC condenser all the time. So, just down and dirty for this.
We're gonna go over to the laser cutter, so we've drawn the part that we need cut, 3D on the computer in SolidWorks, and so we already sent it over. I'm pretty sure they got it cut by now, so we're gonna head over and pick up the cut part and just show you guys the laser and, you know, how we work with those guys. Yay, fun stuff. Hey, Art. See, my guy's already here.
How you doing, man? What's going on?
What's up, dude?
Not much. How you been?
Good. Did you get what we sent over?
Yeah, dude. Just
Already,
pulling it up, getting
already going over it with Nick?
Yep, getting wrapped
Okay,
up right now.
good, fun stuff. So this is the owner. Me and Brian been friends for a long, long time since, you know, I think 9th grade, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe so.
So he's the one that has the big Mazic, and so I think I probably have the biggest cut file out of anybody here, I would imagine, huh?
Absolutely.
I think that's called the friendship file or something, huh?
One of everything.
One of everything, yeah. No production stuff going on. Sometimes two. Maybe a revision here and there. Yeah. But yeah, without him, we can't do what we do without Brian. So he's been super good to us over the years, like many years. He gave me my first welder, a bunch of stuff. So it's been a good. This dude's awesome, man. It's pretty rad to have him able to do stuff for us. Yeah, and so back at the shop, you saw that we 3D modeled that part on SolidWorks, and then we converted it to a DXF file and sent it over to here to Western Fabricators, where Art downloads it and then gets it prepped to go get cut by the laser. And so I don't know all the super technical terms from that, but it's magic. Goes from his computer to the laser. So yeah, he'll be cutting our part pretty quick here, but I don't know if you want to see the laser, and Brian probably knows way more about it than we do if you want to. I don't know the wattage and all that stuff, Brian. I know it cuts some badass shit, like some thick stuff.
It's a later model, new technology. It's a 4,000 watt fiber. They call it a fiber laser. It's newer technology in the last decade or so. Improvement upon the old CO2 laser, which we had before this, and it's just a night and day difference. Way more dependable, way more power, way faster. Finally, just made my last payment on it after 5 years of paying on it. December was the last one, yeah. So now it's time to maybe get into something new or get into something different.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna hang on to it for a while. It's been a really good workhorse. We haven't had a lot of problems with it, and you know, they all have their little issues, but it's been good to us. We keep it really busy. It runs a solid 8 hours a day. Probably do better than that. But
Duty cycles more than that?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely a.
Yeah, so you're out of payments. It's time for another payment then.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it wouldn't feel comfortable if we don't have payments.
$10,000 a month just went away in December. So.
Oh, yeah, that probably feels really good.
Yeah.
And then you'll see it go down and touch down on that plate over there. That's doing a tracer calibration. What that does, that adjusts the static height sensor on it for that nozzle.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so it changes nozzles automatically for material thicknesses.
Oh, yeah, because I remember with the old one, you guys were always cleaning nozzles and changing them out.
So this one, you'll use, if you're cutting different materials, it's just bigger, smaller nozzles, you go back and forth. Believe it or not, some of our bigger, thicker materials use smaller nozzles, you know what I mean?
Really?
They're dual, though. There's actual side cone on there where the oxygen is shooting around it.
Okay.
You know?
So all right.
It's all designed crazy, so.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's so amazing how fast this thing cuts. Like, it's just mind-blowing to me sometimes.
A lot of times with your parts, they're custom, so you can't have, you know?
Right.
You can't make it square like that, so.
I thought the whole time the computer doing it.
So, Art, you just changed the tooling out for the proper radius for this brake, correct?
Yes.
And the material thickness that
Yep.
Yeah, because if you start bending thicker material and too tight of a radius, it can fracture, correct?
Yeah.
And it can get dangerous.
It can damage tooling.
Or damage tooling,
These bolts right here, they'll shear. You over tonnage them.
Gotcha.
They shoot at you like bullets, you know?
And then this is a 100-ton,
100
10-foot press brake, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
100 tons.
Very cool.
And this is technically called like air bending. It's kind of a funky term, but the way you do this, you kind of just float it and you adjust it on and off. You know what I mean? We're not gonna set a program for
because there's no
part.
Right, exactly. We're not repeating a bunch of times, so this isn't a production piece. It's the typical one-off RJ FAB piece that we'll probably never make again. But
exactly. There you go. 90.
Very cool. Cool. I'll take those.
All right, brother. Thanks, buddy.
a lot, Rob.
Appreciate you as always, man.
Take it easy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right, guys, that's a wrap on episode 3. Thanks for tuning in and checking it out. Like and subscribe if you can, please. And drop me a comment, man. I like answering comments or questions that you guys may have. So thanks for tuning in.